Critics in this country and the Middle East continue to question the nuclear deal the U.S. and its allies worked out with Iran. And there's increasing concern about the new air defense zone that China has declared over disputed territory in the East China Sea. Joining me now to discuss this and more, former CIA and NSA Director Michael Hayden. And General, welcome back to Fox News Sunday.
Good morning, Chris.
Do you look at the new 6-month deal with Iran as a reasonable first step to test their intentions, or do you worry that it leaves too much of Iran's nuclear activity and infrastructure in place?
Right. Well, it's not like we had a whole lot of good choices with regard to Iran and their nuclear program, Chris, and I'm willing to let this deal kind of run. But let's be honest with ourselves, all right? We have accepted Iranian uranium enrichment. There is no question about that. That's a different red line than we used to have. I understand that. That may be a result of the facts that have changed on the ground based upon the Iranian program over the past decade.
Let me just interrupt for a second, because John Kerry would sit here right now and he'd say there's nothing in the agreement. We do not recognize their right to enrich.
Well, actually, it says in the agreement that we will come to an agreement with regard to their right to enrich, which is very different than the UN Security Council resolutions to date that says they do not have a right to enrich. Chris, at the end of the day, Iran's going to be a nuclear threshold state. Now, before you think that's condemnatory of what's going on, what we have to do is to push that threshold back as far as possible. And that will identify, that will define whether this was a good idea or a bad idea. Right now, the Iranians are far too close to a nuclear weapon. We have hit the pause button. Now we've got to negotiate hitting the delete button with them.
What is your view, big picture, and I'm sure you studied this as CIA director, what's your view of Hassan Rouhani, the new president of Iran, and of his new government? Do you see them as relative moderates who are, maybe because of the sanctions, working hard to end Iran's isolation, or do you see them more as just playing us and still determined to have a nuclear weapon at the end of the day?
Yeah, it's probably a mix of all that, and it's a bad bet to bet on moderates and not moderates in another country. Rouhani is a pragmatist, though. Perhaps not a moderate, but a pragmatist. And at the end of the day, Chris, we're going to have to negotiate this. And so it might be a good judgment that Rouhani, and particularly his Foreign Minister Zarif, is just about the best deal we can get in terms of interlocutors within the Islamic Republic.